Last week, Henry Cavill announced through his Instagram page that he would be partnering with Natalie Viscuso over at Vertigo, Andy Smiley, the creative director of Games Workshop, and the producers at Amazon to bring the Warhammer 40,000 universe into existence in the entertainment industry for the very first time. The British company Games Workshop, also known as GW, was initially established in 1975 but really began to expand its distributing operations in the late 80s. During this time, it also began to focus its efforts on its core tabletop strategy games, most notably Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40,000, also known as Warhammer 40K. So though GW has been around for over 30 years, it has yet to have leased out the rights to the 40K verse on this large of a scale and with this much publicity. Sure, there have been plenty of video games and animated series and novels that Games Workshop has either created themselves or given the rights to, but the news of a TV series through Amazon that Henry Cavill is producing and starring in has probably been their largest endeavor to embark on to date. And with the release of this news and the acquiring of the IP, fans have been optimistic but apprehensive. Fans have become hyper-aware of their beloved franchises after the controversy surrounding the Star Wars sequel trilogy back in 2017 with the release of The Last Jedi. But they are even more aware of these IPs now more than ever, especially in 2022, where people are divided on almost everything. Politics, ideology, religion, identity. Hell, people can't even agree on whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza. If you hate something and you critique it, you're a bigot, a racist, a sexist, and an alt-right Nazi. But if you like something, you're a pathetic shill, trying to gain access by sucking the teat of the corporate, dehumanizing Hollywood agenda. There's no commonality, and no one can agree on anything. So how in the world are we going to bring fans together and normies together with a universe that is so much ingrained in conflict and violence that its main tagline is, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war? Now, I love this slogan, and I think it accurately represents the overarching themes, absolute absurdity, and over-the-top violent satire of a universe that has been turned up to 11. But in the current state of entertainment, politically correct ideologies reign supreme, and storytelling and character development have fallen by the wayside. Which brings me to the reason for making this video and the purpose for this discussion. There are people out there who want to see your beloved hobbies and pastimes as a tool to be used for their own personal purposes, not something to enjoy, be passionate about, or have reverence towards, but to destroy. They revel in taking the things that they don't like and warping them into something completely different. These individuals want to take the games and stories that we love and pollute them into something unlike the very thing that gave them their appeal in the first place. These people are examples of why we need to gatekeep the f*** out of Warhammer 40K, and honestly everything that we hold dear. We've already seen it done with Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, and The Wheel of Time, just to name a few. If we do not safeguard these things, we will lose them. In every sense of the word, these people are invaders, and they will take everything from us and claim it as their own. One of the great creators here on YouTube, Rags, discussed this topic briefly in one of his videos addressing video games, so I've paraphrased some of the previous statements a bit, but I echo his sentiments overall. But this idea of warping and infiltrating our hobby is actually quite ironic, considering that the warp, also known as the immaterium within the 40K verse, is a dark, chaotic reflection of the material universe, consisting of psychic energy and raw emotion given physical form. It's a place where the four gods of chaos have manifested and is one of the greatest terrors of the Imperial Inquisition, fearing that an untrained human of insufficient power can become the target of demonic possession, corrupting and poisoning the mind and becoming a gateway for the intrusion of demonic servants of the ruinous powers into the physical world. seems apropos given the few who are currently trying to infringe and impose their political ideologies within this hobby by destroying and rewriting the lore to fit their modern sensibilities. But don't get me wrong, there are people who are going to want to come into this hobby with this new announcement from Cavil, GW, and Amazon, and they're going to want to understand more about it, respecting it, enjoying it, and having a lot of fun becoming a fan. This video is not about those individuals, because they have a humble and genuine interest in the lore and the hobby as it is, not trying to change it or say that it has inherently been bad or that there have been systemic issues surrounding it since its inception. See, I began this hobby when I was around 11 or 12 years old, becoming infatuated with the sheer horrific beauty and gruesome extravagance of the lore and the art pieces of the 40K universe. I distinctly remember looking at my first Games Workshop store and reveling in the epic proportions of the 41st Millennium as a window place promotional piece of the Black Templars box set stood in defiance of the enemies of the God Emperor. I began collecting, building, painting, and most important of all, enjoying this hobby, and over time increased my knowledge and understanding of this exponential world. But as I got older, I recognized that not a lot of people are interested in this hobby. I began to introduce the figures and the novels to my friends and even sometimes girlfriends, but they never really seemed to get it, scoffing at it and just relegating it to nothing more than a stupid game made for virgins and man-babies that still live in their mom's basement. Warhammer's themes and stories also really don't seem to be into everyone's liking. In the 41st Millennium, humanity is besieged on all sides and on the brink of total annihilation. Mankind is locked in a perpetual, everlasting war with evil alien overlords, monsters from beyond the stars, who are on a constant quest to annihilate humanity. Seeing though is that the core essence of this setting is of suffering, pain, exaggerated violence, and war, it tends to turn a lot of people off. Not because it inherently excludes those people, but because of its niche and honestly daunting subject matter. Who is the Emperor? What are Space Marines? Wait, there are different factions of Space Marines? Wait, there are also different factions of Chaos, and each one of those have a Chaos god? There are robots, aliens, sexually deviant torture rapists, and this is a tabletop game? Okay, yeah, you know what? I'm out, never mind. This legendarium appeals to the dedicated hobbyist and wargamer, someone who is willing to put in the time, effort, passion, and love that the creators have so willingly done. It also takes patience, thoughtfulness, and coordinated control. Anyone who has built one of these models or tried to paint them knows exactly what I'm talking about. But not just with the miniatures, but with the heaping amount of information that exists within the 40K verse. For instance, I have a friend right now who has been trying to immerse themselves in the Games Workshop properties, and is so overwhelmed with YouTube lore videos, Black Library books, and Reddit forums that they see it as a chore-like homework assignment, and so they've just kind of given up. It took them one day to realize this, and it just isn't for them, and that's fine. Because though something can be made for everyone, not everyone has to enjoy it or understand it, nor will they enjoy it or understand it. Because here's the thing, we are going to get massive amounts of people flooding into this hobby now because of Henry, which can be argued as a good and a bad thing. But one thing we know for sure is that he has just opened up the floodgates to people who have never heard of Warhammer before. And I will say that I'm still going to try and remain optimistic about the show, as long as Henry has creative control. I will support him and respect his decisions because he has proven time and time again that he humbly respects the fans and honors the lore in everything that he does. My issue comes into play when these individuals who don't know the lore, who don't know the tabletop game, don't know the hobby, and don't know the comics or the novels come into this place and become the ones claiming, oh, I've always been a Warhammer fan, or Warhammer has always been political, or I'm as much as a fan as you are, but why do you care about the lore so much? It's just a game, it doesn't really matter. It was the same thing with the comic book crowd when Marvel began to release titles like Iron Man and Avengers, when people began to say, oh yeah, I've read all the comics. Bullshit you have. Those people couldn't tell me one artist or writer that was involved in any of those storylines that were adapted to film. But not only are we going to get the fake fans, we are going to get the fans that want to change it, that see it as problematic. Look at Amazon's Rings of Power. These people called Tolkien a white supremacist and a religious nut, and that his novels needed to be updated for a modern audience. And the same thing will happen to Warhammer if we don't defend it. Which is why I'll reiterate as to why this wargaming franchise is not for everyone. The two most difficult tasks that Henry will have to face with this IP will be 1, bringing in profit and revenue for the organization, and proving that this is something that can actually make money for them and for the shareholders, which in turn means it will most likely have to appeal to a broader audience to acquire more income, and 2, ensuring that the grim-dark, horrifying themes of genocide, extinction, indentured servitude, betrayal, conquest, unending slaughter, misery, and darkness are upheld within the stories. How do we see humanity? If we were part of the meat grinder that is the 41st millennium, would we take the side of the Imperium? These topics are just a taste of the overarching narratives spread throughout the lore. What they are not are any sort of socio-political commentary on Donald Trump's time as president or trans space marines. The themes of Warhammer are much grander, much more philosophical, theological, and psychological. The pathetic trivialities of modern-day politics mean nothing within the grim, dark future and has no place inserting itself within it. These topics and themes are all things that are niche and do not appeal to everyone, and that's okay. It does not have the fun-loving qualities and goofy bright colors of a Disney Marvel film. The 40K verse is a harrowing and bleak reality, full of misery and woe, and yet those are the very things that Wargamers fans and hobbyists love so much about it. They live for the dystopia. So in essence, he will have to try to make something appealing that should never really be appealing in the first place. If they try and appease everyone by updating it for a modern audience, it will become watered down and simplified into nothing more than an empty corpse and hollow, vacuous shell of its once former great and powerful brand. It will become another laughingstock like Thor: Love and Thunder, which will hurt every facet of GW. It will spread decay and corruption like the Plague Lord Nurgle, infesting and infecting everything it touches. The hobby, the tabletop game, the books, the video games, nothing will escape its infectious disease. And on the topic of the abomination that was Thor: Love and Thunder, another reason I believe that it's important for us to gatekeep this hobby is because of the massacre that happened to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm worried that the Warhammer franchise will also suffer the same fate, become mainstream, and will suffer the cost of becoming another mindless product to consume from the elitist Hollywood system, and that we will be fed the same garbage that is made currently. Cookie-cutter projects with no passion, replicating a blueprint, and casting it out amongst the people who are there merely just to consume product and wait for the next product. One of the reasons that this happened to the MCU was due to the changing and updating for modern audiences. The Warhammer 40K verse is not politically correct. It just isn't. That is just the simple nature of it, whether you agree with it or not. Well, if you try to appease to a broader modern audience, it will never work and will become a joke to be laughed at like the state of superhero movie franchises. And I do not want this to become the next legendarium lost to the Hollywood hive mind as just another corporate item to be played with. Because this one is different. This one is special. and original and unique in that it has been protected at all costs. So for those of you who are new to this universe, welcome. You are among good company, and we are more than willing to share with you our passion and hope that you enjoy it as much as we do. And for my brethren, battle sisters, and veterans of this hobby, I ask that you keep a watchful eye and a firm grasp on our beloved universe. Warhammer is made to be enjoyed by everyone, though it is not for everyone. Gatekeep the hell out of it and stand tall against castigation, for the Emperor protects. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.